Hey guys, welcome to the Fieldcraft Survival Podcast. I'm your host for this episode. I'm in the light, holy crap. And I'm here with Gerry Young, one of our instructors here at Fieldcraft Training. Gerry, what's up, dude?
Not much.
You have your flashlight on you today?
I have one in my pocket, yes sir.
Holy crap. I know you always have a flashlight on you, and I know I always do, but I think after this past week, I think we're not alone anymore with people that are carrying flashlights. Just to catch everyone up on speed, or to speed, Jesus, I need coffee or something. We are on the tail end of a blackout that took place here in North Carolina. Gerry and I were teaching a survival course in Aberdeen. Go home, and at like 2 a.m, I get a message from Gerry, and it's like, hey, some idiots just shot up the power station. I'm like, okay. But then I realized that those idiots that shot up the power station affected my power. And not just my power, but 40,000 people in Moore County. They didn't hit just one power station, they hit two. And what eventually happened is that power was out from Sunday until Wednesday, and that whole time people lost their minds. So what this podcast is all about is kind of like the events that happened, the things that we did to kind of maintain our sanity, and then what you guys can do if the power goes out, which it's going to happen. So let's catch everyone up to speed, like with what you did, what I did, because I was fast asleep when you messaged me. How did you know that the power went out?
We were up watching TV and the lights went out. So at that point, we decided we were just going to go to bed for the night.
Now, what time was that?
It was just before 9 o'clock, I think. It's like between 8 and 9 o'clock. I can't remember exactly.
Dude, I went to sleep early then.
I did too. I was tired from the survival class.
Which, by the way, awesome survival class. We had 10 students. They had a great time. I had a great time. The weather was perfect. We're going to do more of those. But it's exhausting when you're out in the woods. And then, I joked with you and I was like, I should have just stayed in the woods. You know what I mean? Like, it is exhausting, but at least like you rise and you fall with like the days out there, and you don't have to face the frustration of going over to your light, turning the switch, and nothing happens, right? So 9 o'clock, power goes out. You send me a text message. Doc sends me a text message, and it's like, hey, I don't have power. And then I realized you don't have power, Doc doesn't have power, I don't have power, and I'm like, holy crap, this is a big event. And I don't know how many TV shows have been made or how many movies have been filmed that feature power outages and then like widespread chaos, but that was like the first thing that was going through my mind. I'm like, all right, I already know I have guns on me, but let me go grab lanterns, let me go check all my stuff. What was the first thing that you did when you knew that the power was going out?
Well, I had to put my daughter to bed, so I made sure there was batteries in her sound machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just dug the extra flashlights out, and I really didn't worry about it because I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. So I figured we have flashlights, we'll wait for the power to come back on. And then Doc texted me to make sure I was okay and saying it was a blackout. And then shortly after that, we got a text from one of the neighbors that said that someone had shot up the stations, and that whether it's true or not, I don't know. I haven't confirmed it. They said that people were starting to want to loot Walmart, and they were bringing in reinforcements.
And that's the text message that I got from you. It was, hey, allegedly like Walmart is getting looted. And I'm like, all right, normally I'm cool with having just my pistol next to me, but I was like, all right, time to break out, the AR and make sure I've got the doors locked. And I checked on my car. And I'm like, how widespread is this? I think the first mistake that I made, and it sounds like you might have been there with me too, is you assume like, oh, it's just going to be off for a day or two, right? Or not even a day, because most power outages are fixed easily. But I mean, the damage that they did to that substation was significant, like to the point where I remember this past week they were flying helicopters to fly in some of the hardware because they said you couldn't just drive it in. But that initial like, oh, it's just going to be like all the other power outages, that's something I will never do again. Complacency, right? Like, and we can call that a concept because that's how we're looking at something like a school shooting too, right? Like, oh, it's going to be one or two people shooting up a school. Oh, we've got a solution for that. Well, let's look at the worst case scenario of a school shooting like Beslan, in Russia. Like that's what we should be preparing for, like the worst case scenario. But that complacency gets you killed. And I'll admit it, another mistake I made, I got done with that survival class and I was like, oh, I'll just get gas in the morning.
Ditto.
Yeah.
I had fuel, but not as much as I should have had.
Agreed. Yeah. If, I've preached the half tank habit for a long time, and I had less than half a tank, but I was like, I'll just get it in the morning. I'm tired right now. I'm going to go home and eat my Chick-fil-A, which I did eat. It was amazing. But I wish I had gone and just said, you know what, I'm going to take care of this right now. Like, man up, just go pump my gas, because all the gas pumps were affected. And for me to get gas, I had to drive to Sanford, so like 20 minutes away, and that was fun.
I didn't make that trip till 2 days later, but yes, it was.
We'll talk about that line of cars on that exit shortly. So we both wake up in the morning, the power is still out. And what's going through your head as far as like the checklist of what I need to do because the power is still out? It's not coming back anytime soon.
So security really wasn't an issue because I have dogs, so I had kind of an early warning device. But I knew that my daughter and wife were gonna want to be warm and have some lights on, so I have a gas fireplace. I lit that, and then I took the generator out and powered up the important things in the house. Number one, the refrigerator, freezer, because I didn't want to lose food, and then just getting lights on so that we weren't stumbling around in the dark.
Yeah, and I mean, I stopped by your place, and you've got it scored away. You've got neighbors that are all on the same page with you too, in terms of like you're looking out for one another, which is really awesome. Me, I just moved to North Carolina, like at the time that this happened, like a little over 30 days. So I don't have a generator yet. I had to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff on the drive or before the drive. So now I'm in a different boat, right? Like you've got your house. I'm in a community, like an apartment community. So I'm not running a generator. Similar to you, I was like, I got to take care of my food. I had just gone to Connecticut to visit family. I had just gotten a deer, and I had all my deer that I spent hours grinding and butchering, and I had that in my freezer, and I was like, I got to keep this good. A freezer with a full freezer, if you don't open that door, you're good for about 48 hours. But we got the text message that said on Sunday that power might not be restored until Thursday. I was like, holy crap, this is a game changer. I was like, damn, all that time that I spent butchering that deer, gone. All that meat, gone. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I closed up my refrigerator. I even duct taped the top of my refrigerator. I was like, I don't want this thing to accidentally open. I'm like, no way in hell. And I maintained the temperature inside the refrigerator, not the freezer, by throwing a couple bags of ice in there. And then as far as like what I was eating, I was just eating the stuff that I knew would go bad first, right? So most people will go refrigerator, freezer, and then pantry with canned goods. As far as my emergency lighting, you had the generator. I didn't. I was using LED lanterns, which, my God, those things, technology's really come a long way. You actually got one of those lanterns that I think I said when I stopped by your house the other day, I was like, damn, I think this is the one that I learned how to camp with, right? Like,
yep, an old Coleman that takes D-cell batteries, but it lasts forever, and it works.
Yeah, and there's a time when you don't want to use propane indoors. There's a time when you don't want to, hook up all your lights to generators because you don't want to draw too much power because you need it for the essentials, right? So I would not recommend throwing away AA mini lanterns. I wouldn't recommend throwing away those D-cell lanterns. If you have a lantern that's rechargeable, make sure that you're charging those things up. That was really a game changer for me. It was just having that, because people are forgetting that when this power outage happened, it's fall on the verge of winter, so the days are getting really long. I'm sorry, the days are getting really short. Darkness is getting really, really long. So you need light at night. And something that I think will freak people out is realizing that there was a curfew in place. Now, I know from your police background, when all the riots were taking place in 2020, was there a curfew up there?
They tried to put one in effect, but it wasn't. We were just too busy doing other things to enforce that.
Yeah. So now, what are some of the consequences of breaking a curfew? Like, what happens? Do you know?
Legally, I don't know what there is. There could be city and village ordinance that if you violate that curfew, you can be fined.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for lack of a better term, it gives police a reason to, if you're out of that and there's a curfew in effect. It gives them a good reason to stop you, to say, where are you going, what are you doing?
Right.
Kind of
right.
just to stop the illegal activity, or at least slow it down a little.
Yeah, because I got a lot of messages. I still had cell phone service. I was still, on social media talking to people, asking like, "How are you doing?" This and that. People were like, "Oh, it's so unconstitutional having a curfew." I'm like, "Look, I get it. Like, I think we should be able to go here and there whenever we want." But they declared a actual disaster, right, or emergency, right?
Yeah,
Countywide emergency, statewide emergency.
Oh, it wasn't.
I'm sorry, countywide.
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 A county, state of emergency in a county.
State of emergency in a county.
The other reason why they put that into effect is because all the traffic lights are out. So for
Yeah.
safety reasons, driving, because people don't understand, or they just don't want to be patient and stop at everybody's supposed to stop, and there were crashes.
Oh my God. I went to Lowe's Home Improvement just to kind of just get an idea of what was going on. Like, after a while, you sit in your house and you can only play on the internet for so long, and I can only do so many tasks. Like, the benefit of having a blackout, my place is clean right now. It's like so clean. Toilets are spotless. But I went to Lowe's, and I was walking around, and when I was walking into Lowe's, I heard this loud thud. It sounded like a dump truck dumped its load, right? And then when I walked out of Lowe's, like 15 minutes later, I heard fire trucks, police cars. And then when I was driving out of Lowe's, I drove by it, and it was like a Tacoma that was pulling a trailer that got sideswiped by another car. Like, it was a bad accident, because people weren't stopping at stoplights, and I think what happens is that we're so used to, like, oh, the light has to be green or it has to be red. Like, that's the only thing we're paying attention to. When the power's out, people are like, oh, I guess there's no light at all. No, there's no rules. And if you have two people that have those thoughts, bad things happen. Now, you didn't see any accidents, right? But you heard of them?
I didn't see any accident. Yeah, I just heard of them.
Where were you getting your news from primarily?
Well, initially, and I don't know if it was because of the power outage, I couldn't access the internet and my cellular data for some reason, whether the tower was down and didn't have power enough for it. So I was actually just getting information from neighbors from word of mouth.
Yeah, and word was still traveling pretty quickly because you had information I didn't have, and I had the ability to, like, go on to the Talk of Moore County or whatever the Facebook group is and see people saying, oh, I heard this, I heard that. But I mean, you had all of that, even though you didn't have that, digital connection to the rest of the world. The traffic thing, just still talking about that. I'll admit it. I blew through one light and I was like, holy shit, that was bad. You know what I mean? Like, I got that pucker factor where I was like, that could have been me sideswiping, and maybe it was me having complacency or whatever. But I
almost have to increase your situational awareness tremendously so that you're acknowledging that, oh, there's no lights, to catch your attention. You have to pay more attention when you're driving.
And one of the things that I started paying attention to after I did that was I made it a point to stop at every light, but then I noticed that the cars behind me didn't notice that I was slowing down, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get, rear-ended here. Like, it was dangerous on the road. So for people that were like, oh, don't poo-poo the curfew. I mean, between 9 o'clock and 5 a.m. during a blackout, where are you going, right? Like, what is your purpose? Unless you're maybe out of town and you're just coming back home. But, like, what are you doing out and about? Because at those hours, I'm pretty exhausted, and my situational awareness is going way down. What else did you find was like a difficulty during the blackout? I mean, we have driving. We have keeping food cool. You already mentioned keeping your house warm. I know for my side, like, I don't have a fireplace in my apartment. I just put on clothes, and I considered it camping indoors. I was like, I've got freaking clothes to be in the Arctic if I need to. So I just felt like I was camping indoors, but people were losing their minds over how to heat their homes. Did you hear of any ways that people were getting creative heating their homes?
I didn't hear of it. All I've heard is a lot of whining that people wanted somebody to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And some people aren't capable of taking care of themselves. You have elderly people. I think there was an elderly person that died, and they're attributing it to the action where they took the power out.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of just a preparedness thing. You're like you said, it was like camping, but a big hard-sided tent.
Yeah, the best freaking tent you could possibly get. like I know, continuing with that idea of camping indoors, I took my camp stove, I put my camp stove on top of my actual stove.
Did the same exact thing.
Problem solved. I know as far as the toilets, like I didn't have any issues with water. I did hear of people who had issues getting clean water, and they were like, what do we do? What do we do? How do we flush our toilets? And it's like, well, you have dirty water coming out of your sink then, if that's the case, or you have water stored up. People forget you can add water to your bowl and the pressure manually flushes your toilet. But that type of knowledge just disappeared. I don't know what people were doing. I don't know, like, were they just going in their backyard? I know that if you don't know or don't have a solution for sanitation, that's where you're going to get sick. Like,
Yes.
I mean, and you've got the medical background. I mean, what type of medical related injuries or medical related illnesses or whatever it may be can come about because of a power outage? Like, what are people not thinking of?
Well, they're wandering around in the dark. So just simple falls and tripping into stuff trying to feel their way around in the dark, or burns from trying to cook with a fire outside when you're not used to cooking over a fire, or carbon monoxide poisoning from bringing gas grills and alternate heating sources inside and not ventilating it well enough. Like, I managed to set my smoke detectors off heating up my Zodi shower in the bathroom without having a window open. And that's just a small propane burn.
Yeah.
But it was enough that it set my smoke detectors off.
Wow.
So we had to, but simple fix was I was just busy doing other things and not thinking clearly. And it wasn't the carbon monoxide detector went off. It must have been just the heat from that.
Man, I'll tell you, we talked not too long ago about just that miserable cold, and it's not freezing cold. It's not below 32. We talked about how there's that cold that is just bone chilling where the wind is blowing and it's like 35 to 45 degrees. Luckily, the power outage, or I should say coincidentally, the power outage happened during a cold spell, which actually made it easier to preserve the food. Like when my apartment got cold, I was like, I guess I'm not trying to warm my body or cool my body and try to keep my food cold. It was like, I'll be just as cold as my food, and I'm good with that. But how would this have been different if this was like North Carolina summer, like high humidity, 90s? Like, what do you think could have happened?
Well, then you got to be concerned about with heat related illnesses. People, getting too hot without having the air conditioner running. I know when I moved down here in August, I had my air conditioner running constantly, and that was just to keep it comfortable. So I plan on making sure that I can run my air conditioner off my generator.
Yeah.
If that were to happen. But then you're going to have to worry about food spoiling going faster. And you talk about hygiene. If people's toilets aren't flushing, now you've got heat to get that bacteria growing. And
yeah, when we think of like a survival scenario or an emergency scenario, everyone jumps right away to end of the world, atomic bomb, right? Like a Last Babylon type of stuff, or zombie apocalypse or whatever. We turned the lights off and people lost their freaking minds. I know from my side, again, we live about 15 minutes apart. Just on my neck of the woods around golf courses, people were asking questions that I was like, you don't know the answer to that? Like, seriously, you don't know? And you try to help them out. You shoot them a DM or whatever. But I was just blown away that common knowledge just, it wasn't there. Like, what do we do with all the food in our refrigerator if it's gone bad? It's like, you probably throw it out. But they didn't know what to do. Now, granted, some people held on to it because I already heard accounts of people who lost hundreds of dollars worth of groceries. They filed a claim and they've already got the insurance company saying, we got you. Like state of emergency, you don't have to jump through hoops, that type of thing. So I get it. Some people kept their food in their freezers. But when I went to the grocery store and I'm looking down the entire frozen food section and I'm talking to the grocery store attendees, or no, workers. No need to get all fancy with the term. Attendees? No. Grocery store workers. They were like, yeah, we lost tens of thousands of dollars in the meat section alone. And then I was like, oh, that's terrible. They're like, oh, no. What was even worse, the compactor in the back is run by electricity. They couldn't throw out the meat, so they had it just rotting in the back of the store, which means that now you're bringing in vermin. It's like, we don't need a nuclear disaster to cripple this country.
No. And when I went to Sanford on Monday,
Yeah.
there was actually people that they must have had excessive amounts of hot dogs in their freezer. They actually were giving away hot dogs and bottles of water roadside to
No
anybody
kidding.
who wanted them.
Yeah. And you know, maybe it takes a disaster like this to bring out the good in humanity. I know the local Food Lion was giving out free cases of water, like one per family. I know the food truck, what's that, the food truck place called?
Oh, Red's Corners?
Red's Corners. They were giving away food to all the line workers, all the Duke Energy guys, which, by the way, if you're from Duke Energy and you're paying attention to this, thank you so much. You guys are badass. Every time I was out, there was always someone on every single corner, and like you guys delivered ahead of schedule. But yeah, Red's Corner, they were giving out food. Did you hear of any others? Like,
There was a couple of churches that were doing the same thing.
Mhm.
They were giving out, almost had like a food line, for lack of a better term. So they were like, anybody that wanted it, come in and get food, something warm. And then at that point, they had the shelters open also at some of the county and town buildings where they were giving people food and water also.
hot showers.
Hot showers. There was somewhere in Moore County, they were doing a laundry service also.
Yeah.
Which that was the other thing my wife and I were thinking about is like, what if you have a sick child and, if anybody who has children knows, kids are sick, they make a mess out of their sheets numerous times and towels, clean up messes, and it's like, what would you do? Because eventually you'd run out of stuff.
Food, hot showers, laundry service, warming centers, which we're both from the Northeast, and our idea of cold is a little bit different than Southern cold, right? Like, I know some of the Southern friends that we have here, like it hits 50 and they've got triple fat goose down jackets on, right? Like, but they had warming centers set up. Something that people took for granted, device charging centers, because I know that it was interesting when people were like, oh my God, I don't have a battery pack. I can't charge my phone. I don't have or they did have a battery pack, but then the battery pack ran out. It's like, well, how many battery packs do you need to charge your phone from completely 0 to 100%? Like, would you need to do that one time a day, twice a day? How many battery packs would that theoretically need? But then also, how do you conserve the energy of your phone? Like, do you only have a comms window where you're like, I'll check my phone for the first 15 minutes every hour or every 2 hours? Because if you don't have the means to go out and buy all these battery packs, well, you don't have to be dead in the water. You can kind of say like, all right, I'm going to ration everything,
And you have your vehicle also. If you have a vehicle, there's your portable charging station. You can, most vehicles now have multiple charging ports, so you can plug lots of things and lots of the LED and small fans and stuff, which I actually used a small fan because the fan wasn't hooked up to the electricity part for the generator. So I had a little fan that's meant to go on car seats or strollers that was above the fireplace, and that was circulating the heat in the house, and it actually kept the house plenty warm.
What were you saying when I came over for dinner the other night? You told your neighbor, you're like, yeah, we used to idle our cars at work. Like, how long can a car idle on a tank of gas?
On a tank?
Yeah.
You can go, if you have a full tank of gas, you could probably go 48 hours idling, I bet, if not longer.
Yeah, because you said that they never turn the cars off at work, right?
Right.
It was like,
in the wintertime, just because it was so cold, they would just constantly, but they were fueling them up in between there.
yeah.
But I mean, like on a snowy night that you're not driving around, your car's idling to keep the car cleared off, you might go through, a quarter of a tank of gas just sitting idling.
Yeah, that's something that Glover talks about when we do the mobility experience out west. He's like, if you are trying to figure out how you want to spend the night using your vehicle to get into the great outdoors, you have rooftop tents, you've got ground tents. A lot of people, when they come to those mobility experiences, they'll just sleep inside their vehicle and they'll cut plywood to create platforms that level the area between the passenger seat and their cargo area, especially like, how like I've got that Boss Strong Box, like I've got to have a piece of plywood to level the seat to the top of the Boss Strong Box if I wanted to sleep in my car. But he's like, yeah, you could idle your vehicle for a very, very long time, and your vehicle is a generator, right? Like, people forgot that. One of the interesting things that happened, one of the coolest stories I was telling these guys earlier in our meeting, I was like, yeah, Gerry had me over for dinner. He had his neighbors over for dinner, and your neighbor, you said that you noticed that your neighbor's generator wasn't working.
Correct.
And you went over there and you put fuel in it, or you started it for him?
Yeah, I went over and put fuel in it.
His response at dinner, I thought he was going to cry. He's like, I can't believe you would do that. You're that good of a person. You know, I think that's a testament, number one, to you for being a stand-up dude, but it's also like proof that a blackout's not going to destroy that relationship between neighbors. You know, like I think we're so quick to go to gloom and doom. Like, oh, you come to my door and I'm not going to let you in. I did not experience that. If anything,
and I know that his parents are both elderly.
Yeah.
Father has dementia, so I know that he's not capable of doing it, and the mother's just older, so she shouldn't be picking up a 5-gallon can of gas. So I knew it was off, and at first I texted him just because I didn't want to cross any lines, but then I didn't get a text back from him, and I knew his parents were in there, so because I went and helped them hook their generator, get their generator set up the night before.
Mm-hmm.
It's good seeing other prepared people, like the guy's girlfriend who came for dinner. She had a gun in one pocket and a thing of pepper spray in the other pocket.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just good to know that's the kind of neighbors you have.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know what it is or why we do it, but I feel like there's a hesitancy to get to know your neighbors. It's like, this is my castle. I'm going to stay here. No one comes in here. It's like, but your neighbors are going to be there when stuff like that happens. You know, I've been living in North Carolina for a month now, and we finally, and I still have to give you mine. I was like, Gerry, I know you gave me once the combo to this and that and your door code, but like, that's good to have someone who can go by and check on your place. You know, like that's a simple prep that costs nothing other than a little bit of trust. You know, like worst case scenario, something happens at your daughter's school, I'm on that list to pick up your daughter and rush her to you. You know, what are some of the other things that you think people should be doing? Because like we've covered a lot of the basics, but there's other stuff that we're forgetting.
Like I was thinking for myself, even like backup communication. Like what if the cell's gone down, you know, cell tower's gone down, and we didn't have any way to like communicate back and forth. So now I'm looking at getting even one of the, you know, the cheap handheld ham radios, and you know, even if it's for emergency use. I mean, yes, I should get my license, and because I've dragged my feet with that long enough, but just to have an alternate form of communication, because I don't have a landline cell phone, and that was also down because so I couldn't get any internet access even when I powered the Wi-Fi router up. It just wasn't there. So a big thing for me was alternate communication source.
Yeah, and I've got that Garmin Inreach that I finally pulled the trigger on, and for I think they're on sale now, like $350. It's like $120 a year for the subscription. But knowing that I could quite literally be anywhere in the world and send you a text message, that right there is powerful, right? Like you can communicate when the phone lines are down. I've had some people say like, oh, you know, what if the government shuts down GPS? And I'm like, yeah, well, what if this and what if that? We could what if to death,
right?
You know, I would rather have it and run that risk than not have it and be like, well, didn't matter anyway, right? I'm screwed either way. John over here was talking about setting up a larger antenna so he can have a further reach with his radios. I think that makes a lot of sense to have that radio communication. Pony Express, like you said, messages got out pretty quickly that way. So like survival priorities, like security wise, I mean, we already talked about this. We check doors at night. You know, during the blackout, instead of just carrying my Glock 19 just naked, I put the weapon light on it. I was like, I could go somewhere. Or
that was the other thing. Weapons mounted lights, you know, I double check those on the shotguns and the rifles just to make sure. And regarding light, I also have solar powered motion activated floodlights outside around the yard. It's for our dogs at night so I can see what they're doing, but it also gives you another layer of security, so you know if those lights come on and dogs are inside that
someone's out there.
Something's out there.
Yeah. So emergency comms, security, you know, I'm trying to think what else we have. Water, we already talked about. I mean, it makes sense too. Like when you go to the grocery store, buy an extra gallon or two of water every week, right? And you know, unless you're storing hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water indoors above the ground floor, you don't have to worry about changing the structural integrity of your house. Like I know if you have like one of those big 55-gallon drums and you start stacking those in the corner, like it can do this to your house. But I mean, if you're living like I am right now in an apartment, I've got it placed here, there, and everywhere, and it doesn't take up a lot of space. But I have that water in case, for whatever reason, the water got compromised. Food, I mean, even within a week, you're not going to require a lot of food. You know, like food is a long-term survival priority, but let's say that this event did go more than a week. Yeah, you probably would need to start eating. You know, you're going to lose your capability of doing work. You're going to get tired. I mean, you definitely want to have food. What, I know we talked about this. What's your go-to survival food?
The go-to?
Yeah. Well, no, not go-to, but like, what do you have stored up? Like, what's your favorite type?
I have everything from dehydrated to rice and beans with the lentils, peas, and rice. If you mix them 2 parts rice, 1 part lentils, 1 part beans, I think it is, it gives you like a complete protein and a complete, balanced meal to eat. Mm-hmm. I mean, you wouldn't want to live on it forever, but it will sustain you for quite some time.
Yeah. And, if you're in the cold, you need fat. Every time I go to the supermarket, I buy a big jar of peanut butter. And I know you're a peanut butter slut like I am. And I will, throughout the day, just grab a spoonful. And it's like, I'm good now for like another hour and a half, And it's, again, it's not sexy. It's low tech. Just add a little food prep to your emergency supplies. Shelter, we talked about having good clothing. We talked about warming your place. But now let's talk about this concept, because you saw it and I saw it. For whatever reason, you do not feel comfortable. You do not feel safe in your house. I know personally, like my neighborhood out here in North Carolina, one of the highest concentrations of tier 1 SF guys in the world, right? All right here. People don't do stupid shit because they know that they're probably going to get smoked, right? Yeah. Like you got a bunch of guys that are super capable. And then you got the redneck factor. So if you're not a super capable dude from the military, you're a good old farm boy that has probably been shooting rats in the backyard, that type of thing. So you're doubly screwed. But let's say for whatever reason, you decide, I'm not staying in my house. I'm running out of food. Maybe sanitation's terrible. Maybe you're noticing crime in the neighborhood, something, and you decide to bug out. What was your experience being on the road? Because then I'll share mine.
So I decided I was going to go grab some. I didn't need fuel, but I wanted to get some extra fuel for the generator and get some in my truck. And then if it was going to be out until Thursday, I wanted to get some backup propane tanks and just some extra food to have, stuff to cook on the smoker. And as I got off the secondary roads and hit a primary road, there was traffic backed up for probably 2 miles, as far as I could see, trying to get onto Highway 1 or US Route 1. Yeah. So like it's not going to be a fast thing. Like it should have been an hour-long trip for me to go grab my stuff and get back, and I was gone like 3 hours because the stores in Sanford were just mobbed.
And we can say this for sure about this event. It was isolated, right? Like Moore County, 40,000 people affected, but I drove 20 miles or 20 minutes away and there's full power. But what was interesting, and this is my experience, I went to one Circle K and I was like, oh great, Circle K's open. I'm getting gas, top off the vehicle. I'm going to go inside, get a hot cup of coffee. I even got this is at 7 a.m. I got chicken sandwiches. I was like, oh, this will be good. Just take advantage of the resources when you got them. So I'm like, hey, can I grab a couple bags of ice? They're like, oh, we're out of ice. We're not expecting ice back for maybe a day or two. And this was right off the main drag leading out of Aberdeen. Well, I said, I've got a feeling. I got a hunch that people are sticking to the main drag. They're not going off the exits. So I drove one exit north and I drove a mile or two off that exit, found another Circle K. And I'm like, what are the chances that this ice container is going to be empty? I open it up and it's to the brim. And I asked the gal that was inside, I'm like, hey, you see a lot of people from Moore County? She goes, no. No, that was maybe a mile north and a mile, say, east. And all the supplies were there. People tend to go to the convenience store, right? They go to convenience, but they don't think of the inconvenient that could offer them what they need. Here's another concept. You're in an area where there's a huge crowd and something causes people to rush to the exit. Well, everyone finds the convenient exit and they don't look for the inconvenient exit, right? And as a result of going towards convenience, they die because they get trampled. Well, the person that says, hey, that window up there, we could probably get out of it, yeah, they live. I think that's something that people need to consider in these circumstances is like, where are most people going to go?
I call it the cattle effect.
Yeah, go ahead, talk about that.
Because anybody who's had like cattle, what they do is cows, they leave and go back to the barn on the same exact way all the time. They go right nose to tail, they weave their way down their trail. And if you shut a road down, and people that live there know there's other roads around, they're like, this is the only way I know how to go home. So that's why they're only going to go to the places they know and they're comfortable. I always go to the Circle K in this corner. Oh, there's nothing there. Or that's why there was nothing there, because they used it up. But it's just, that's what it's, the cattle effect. They only know one way to do it, and they don't think outside of the box to find an alternative route.
Yeah, and at night, I know we're jumping around all over the place. So for all you haters that might say they're all scattered, well, guess what? This just happened. Suck it. So for all the haters that are like, they're jumping around. Well, let's talk for a second about keeping food cold. The first couple nights, it got down to like 30s. Well, 40 degrees is the critical temperature for your refrigerator. A lot of people didn't think to take all their food out, keep it outside, and then bring it in the morning. I know that there's a chance that you're probably going to cool off your refrigerator, but there's a guarantee that for most of the night, most of the 24-hour period, it's going to be stable. Man, what else is there? There's so much that we could talk about on the subject. Like moving forward, what are some of the changes that you're going to make to your?
Well, first thing I'm probably going to do is install a generator transfer switch, just so I don't have to run lead cords all over in order to have stuff. Figure out the essential circuits that I want wired into that, so I can just plug the generator into that. I'm going to have my stuff more organized because I just moved here in August, and it wasn't a total scramble. I knew I had stuff that I was looking for, such as the camp stove and the propane for the camp stove and lanterns, but they were just kind of like scattered, and they were in this shed and in that shed. So I'm just going to kind of get stuff more organized. Fortunately, my wife is on board with all this. So it was great. She was able to take care of tasks, and so I don't have to worry about that part. Definitely have to replenish all the stuff that I used, because I did go through some smaller propane tanks, and I got to replace some gas. Get in the move, not checking my gear after the move for the Zodi shower I have set up where I could have hot water. I rigged it up with a plastic hose nozzle from the sink, like for spraying your dishes off. Well, in the move, that got smashed. So we couldn't really use it, so I ended up just taking the one off the sink. So that's something that has to be replaced. We swapped them back and forth. Again, mostly it's just going to be replenishing things.
Yeah.
Maybe get a couple other lights, but again, wiring the house with the generator. But then when the generator goes down, figure out another heat source. So I have a contingency heat source. I have small propane heaters that we could use, just ventilate it to provide some more heat to the, house. And that was the other thing we did, is we closed off the non-essential rooms, and we kind of used like half the house. Mm-hmm. We set a living room up as a bedroom because that's where the heat was. And then we all just kind of had a little slumber party and camped out there, and it was the kitchen living room area. So that was good. But
so closing off the airspace that you don't need to heat, replenishing gear. I know those little 1-pound propane tanks disappeared. They're gone.
Even in Sanford, the shelves were empty. And the other thing I did is I hadn't ever replaced the charcoal because I didn't move it when I moved down, but I went and bought more charcoal so that I could do cooking on the Dutch oven outside also. And
you can also get the hoses with the adapters to run your 2-burner camp stoves off of like a 5-pound tank or a 35-pound tank.
Yes, that's the other thing that's on the list to do.
Yeah, it's like $25. I just bought one at Ace Hardware. Now, what about your daughter? Because obviously, like we're grown-ass men, and your wife is an adult, but your daughter, she's young. How do you maintain your sanity? How do you keep her entertained when power's out? Because like kids these days, all they want to do is like be entertained by what they have in front of them. So like, what did you guys do?
She, fortunately for me, wants to be involved in everything I'm doing. So me being busy going around taking care of the generator, getting the shower up and running for everybody. She had to be right there involved in all that. So that kind of occupied her a lot. She has lots of like games and stuff, and you just dig new stuff out that she hadn't seen before. I could take a box full of stuff from moving and put it on the floor, and she's going to be occupied for hours. I'm not saying stuff's not going to get destroyed in that box, but she's going to be occupied. And
yeah, because I was surprised. I brought over that sacrificial glow stick. I was like, well, it's something, right? Like maybe she'll play with that for hours. She kind of looked at it and was like, oh, this is nice, and put it down and like walked away. I'm like,
but she did take it to bed with her that night.
Okay, yeah, because I'm the Funkle, right?
That's right.
So all right, so we covered like the vehicles, we covered the house. Something that we forgot to mention: headlamps. Like, my God, if ever there was a time that you're gonna get the most bang for your buck, it's out of a headlamp. I mean, it was daytime and you had one around your neck.
Because you're gonna go in. I mean, the same thing back when I was more so a city police officer. It's like, it's daylight. What are you carrying a flashlight for? Mm-hmm. Well, because basements are dark.
Yeah.
The storage sheds didn't have power, so when I'm going in the shed fishing around for something, you need the headlamp.
Yeah. Now the power for me came on Tuesday, right? So I didn't have it as bad as you. I think you got yours back on Wednesday, right?
No, you got yours back.
Or was it Monday?
You got yours Monday, and I got mine back Tuesday morning. So it wasn't that long.
Yeah, well, it really was not that bad. I feel like I got the long end of the stick on that one, right? Now, when that power came on, I immediately started charging my batteries again. I had a SunJack solar panel, like a little folding notebook-sized solar panel, and I was using that to charge my batteries when the sun was out. But when that power came back on, I'm like, I need to get my batteries back up and running, and I'm not going to draw a lot of power. Like, I didn't turn on the lights in the house or anything like that, but I started plugging in these batteries because I was like, if it's one of these, hey, we're going to give you a little bit of power, kind of charge up your fridge, then we're going to turn it off, or if it was intermittent for whatever reason, I was like, I'm going to take advantage of what I have before it's gone. I think if anything from this power outage, it made me realize the importance of like, how can I generate power? So vehicle, solar power. Have you ever messed around with one of those BioLite stoves?
I have not.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad option. But I mean, how long are you running your stove for? Like, I think it's more of a novelty maybe. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's a grill that you're grilling for hours and hours, like for a party, maybe, but I don't know. That was another option. I was like, maybe I'll get one of those. And I was like,
the other thing I saw too, that shout out to Nate Spearing, is DeWalt makes a USB charger that goes on the DeWalt batteries. So it's easy to keep your DeWalt batteries charged up. And then the unit just slides on the top of the battery, and I think it has 2 USB ports in it.
No BS. I got to show you something. I saw that same thing, and just so you know, where is it? Gallery.
That's it.
Yeah, I screenshotted that same thing. I was like, damn, I did not know that they make one of these. So I've got a former student from one of the courses down in South Carolina, Brianna. Brianna, I'm going to hit you up. She works for DeWalt. Maybe we'll get some company ones and do some testing on them. Man, I will say this, like, the power grid is super vulnerable. They're offering $75,000 reward for this guy. He got away, or she got away, or whatever. Early on, there was speculation that the grid went down out of protest for like a drag queen show in Southern Pines. I'm pretty sure that they've dismissed that, but they're also running with the possibility that it could have been a disgruntled worker. But I mean, guys, there's no secret that the power grid is fragile. Like, I guess this happened in Vegas already. It's happened, or not Vegas, Portland. It's happened in parts of California. It's happened in South Carolina. It could happen anywhere. We lucked out in that it wasn't super hot. It wasn't super cold. I mean, I feel terrible that people lost hundreds of dollars worth of groceries before the holidays, and now they've got to spend that, and who knows how it affects, their family. But man,
the other people that are on like public assistance and that kind of thing. So it was just after the first of the month, so they may not, they're not going to get more money or be able to get more food for another couple, weeks. So that's.
Yeah, it was rough. And I think there might still be like a couple thousand that still don't have power, like fringe areas. But there are a lot of lessons to be learned from the power outage. Again, it doesn't have to be a nuclear disaster, zombie apocalypse, COVID outbreak, right? COVID. But, I mean, just turning off the lights, that revealed so many weaknesses in our game. And we're a preparedness company, but there were still things I was like, damn, I could do that better, you know? And hopefully if people are listening to this, watching this, they're going to say, man, that's what it's really like for a group of squared away guys. I'm not squared away, or maybe I'm like them, but it's still going to suck. We talk about that idea of embracing the suck. Well, we just did. Any final thoughts? I mean, there's so much we could talk about.
We could go on forever and ever, but my big takeaways are make sure I have all my stuff squared away. I mean, I was prepared, but not organized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it didn't take me, but a couple hours to get, everything up and running, but I could have made it more efficient to do that. Making sure that I don't leave the gas can empty when I get done filling the lawnmower or chainsaw or whatever it may be, and keeping the truck. I had a half a tank in my truck, but I should have filled up that day before, and I didn't.
Yeah, I know I had a whole bunch of credit card reward bucks, and I was like, well, what am I going to do next time my freezer is on the fritz like that? Well, I ended up buying a big Yeti, which actually should be delivered today at some point. But I was like, I'll just throw everything in there, and that thing will keep things cold for a long time. The 5-gallon or 5-pound propane tank, that was an easy purchase. Like you said, have everything organized. Have a blackout kit.
Community. It doesn't cost money to get to know your neighbors. It doesn't have to be the zombies are coming or a Red Dawn scenario. Just talking to your neighbors and prior to it, so that you have a communication network, or if you need something, you could go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't want to call out Doc or what he was asking for, but it's like he put out the feelers to the community, and a stranger helped him out. It's like, dude, just call me. I live 5 minutes from here.
I had a little chat with him about that also.
Yeah, I know, right? But it's a powerful tool if you have people that are like-minded, that have different skill sets, that you're working as one unit now as opposed to a bunch of individuals, So guys, this power outage, we're still feeling the effects of it. I know that folks are buying things online to improve their prep now. Don't let what happened to us here in North Carolina just kind of be a one and done. Learn from our mistakes, learn from our accomplishments, what we were able to keep going. And hopefully if this ever affects you, then you'll know exactly what to do, or you'll have a better idea of what to do. Anything else
I can think of?
Yeah, till the next time, right?
That's right.
So all right, guys, like I said, this has been an interesting experience. This is the first podcast back, so if we were a little bit scattered with our thoughts, look, there's no script here, right? I mean, I've got my phone, but it's not on for following this. This is just all the stuff that's fresh in our minds, not even 72 hours after the power came back on. Hopefully you're taking notes. If you have any questions, put your questions in the comments below. Reach out to us on social media. Gerry, now that he's retired from the police force, can actually be a little bit more active on social media. So what's your Instagram if people want to?
At Young, Gerry Young, with a G for Gerry.
Yeah, and I'm at Estela Wild Ed. You can always reach out to at Fieldcraft Survival or at Fieldcraft Training. Guys, we'll answer your questions if you have them. Our goal is to make you a better prepared version of yourself, and hopefully from our experience, you're well on your way to that. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Kevin Estela of Fieldcraft Survival. Until next time.